The interstellar dominion was vast, an empire that stretched across galaxies, with planets and systems under its tight control. Its ships moved through space like shadows, silently claiming new territories without mercy. In their eyes, Earth was nothing more than a small, isolated world at the edge of the galaxy, unimportant and primitive. They had never even bothered to learn the planet's real name, referring to it only as Terra. The Dominion's leaders thought Earth was an easy target. They knew of the planet's resources, its minerals, and the strange creatures that lived there, but they underestimated the people themselves. The Empire had already taken countless planets, and Earth seemed to them like just another place to conquer. They didn't think twice about sending a fleet to annex it. Captain Veros of the Dominion's flagship Admiral's Wrath was tasked with leading the operation. He had faced little challenge in his career. His fleet had crushed countless worlds, and he had no reason to expect anything different this time. With a smug smile, he issued the orders. Earth would be taken, and its people would be enslaved or wiped out. It would be easy. The fleet arrived at Earth's orbit without resistance. Captain Veros and his crew were confident. They expected Earth's leaders to bow down and surrender. Instead, something unexpected happened. The first ship they sent to the planet's surface was disabled within minutes of entering the atmosphere. At first, it was just a small technical malfunction, but then the ship's systems started failing one after another. It was a quick breakdown, a cascade of errors that left the ship falling uncontrollably toward the planet. The crew tried to send out distress signals, but no one responded. The ship crashed to the ground, smoking and broken, but its systems remained strangely silent. Captain Veros watched in disbelief from the Admiral's Wrath. What happened? He demanded, his voice rising in frustration. His crew scrambled to find an explanation, but nothing made sense. Earth wasn't supposed to be able to do this. The Dominion had never encountered a planet that fought back like this. It was supposed to be an easy conquest. Veros ordered the next wave of ships to engage, sending in a much larger force. This time, Earth's defenses didn't stop them in the same way. But they didn't need to. As the fleet moved closer to the planet, they were met with an unexpected sight. Earth's people were not the helpless, weak creatures they had assumed. What the Dominion didn't know was that the humans had been quietly advancing in their own way for centuries. While the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had focused on massive warships and advanced weapons, Earth had spent its time developing something far more unpredictable: creativity, innovation, and resilience. A group of engineers in a small city had discovered something hidden in the wreckage of the first ship. They weren't warriors or scientists, but they were brilliant minds who understood how things worked. They reversed engineered the alien technology. Within days, they had managed to understand the basic principles of the ship's propulsion and weaponry, and then they adapted it. Soon after, small groups of humans began to build ships, modest ones at first, but they were fast and incredibly agile. They didn't have the massive firepower of the Dominion's fleet, but they had something else: tactics. They used their speed and cunning to confuse the larger ships, dodging their fire and attacking from unexpected angles. The humans were learning how to fight back, and they did it in the most human way possible, by thinking outside the box. The next wave of Dominion ships arrived, expecting an easy battle. But when they entered Earth's atmosphere, they were met with a surprise. The smaller, more agile human ships swooped in from all directions, firing with pinpoint precision. The Dominion's massive warships were too slow to respond, their powerful guns unable to track the fast-moving humans. In the chaos, another Dominion ship fell to the ground in a fiery explosion. Captain Veros clenched his fists. "What is going on?" he asked again, now furious. He had expected the humans to submit, not to fight back with such force and cunning. The Empire had misjudged Earth. They had thought the humans would be easy to defeat. Now the Dominion was faced with a problem they had never anticipated: a planet that refused to be conquered. Captain Veros stared at the view screen of the Admiral's Wrath, watching the wreckage of another Dominion ship burning in Earth's atmosphere. It was an embarrassment. His fleet had been humiliated by a primitive planet with no right to challenge them. The worst part, the humans didn't even seem to be fighting the way the Empire expected. They didn't have vast armies, advanced weapons, or powerful ships like the Dominion. Yet, they were winning. What's their secret? Varos muttered to himself, pacing the deck. His officers were just as puzzled. They couldn't understand how the humans had managed to damage their ships. Nothing about Earth's technology made sense to them. The Empire's intelligence reports had been clear. Earth was weak, technologically backward, and completely incapable of facing the power of the Dominion. But now it was clear that Earth's resilience wasn't just about brute strength. It was about something else. The humans were adaptable, clever, and resourceful. And their creativity, once underestimated, had become their greatest weapon. On Earth, something extraordinary was happening. The world's leaders, seeing their first victory over the Dominion, realized they had a rare opportunity. The people of Earth, scientists, engineers, and even everyday citizens, had come together to face a common enemy. In just a few short days, Earth had begun to reverse engineer the alien technology they had captured from the Dominion ships. They worked in secret, away from the prying eyes of the invaders. A small group of engineers, led by Dr. Alice Carter, one of Earth's most brilliant minds, were the first to truly crack the Dominion's technology. They didn't just study it, they understood it. They didn't have the resources of the Dominion, but they had something more powerful, their minds. Dr. Carter had been one of the first to study the wreckage from the initial Dominion ship. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but soon enough, she was able to reverse engineer parts of the ship's propulsion system. The Dominion had used a technology based on energy fields and electromagnetic propulsion, which was far more advanced than anything humanity had ever used. But Dr. Carter wasn't afraid of a challenge. By the end of the week, her team had built their first prototype of a new type of spacecraft, one that didn't rely on fossil fuels or chemical propulsion, but used the Dominion's energy fields to power it. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The human ships were small, fast, and agile. They didn't have the firepower of the Dominion's massive warships, but they had speed, and they could outmaneuver their enemies. The Dominion ships, large and slow, couldn't keep up. The humans didn't try to fight like the Dominion. Instead, they used their ships to attack from unexpected angles, striking when the Empire's ships least expected it. The Dominion fleet wasn't prepared for this kind of warfare. The next battle was even more surprising. As Varos watched from his flagship, human ships swooped down from the sky like hornets, darting in and out of the larger Dominion ships. They fired precise, calculated shots, targeting weak points in the enemy ship's defenses. The Dominion fleet, which had been trained to fight in a more traditional, predictable way, was caught off guard. One of their larger ships, the Vigilant, exploded after a series of well-placed hits from the human ships. "What are they?" Varos asked, his voice tense with disbelief. "How are they doing this?" He ordered his fleet to regroup, but the humans were relentless. They attacked with precision, each strike calculated to weaken the Dominion forces. The humans weren't interested in winning through sheer force. They were interested in outsmarting their enemies, using their knowledge and creativity to turn the tide of battle. Back on Earth, the scientists were already working on the next phase of their plan. They had successfully built several small advanced ships, but they knew they needed more. They needed to reach beyond their planet, to space. They needed to create a fleet of their own, capable of taking the fight to the Dominion's doorstep. The humans didn't have the massive resources of the Dominion, but they had something the Empire didn't. They had hope, ingenuity, and the drive to succeed. They had something far more powerful than advanced technology, an unbreakable will to protect their home, their way of life, and their future. With each victory, Earth's confidence grew. They weren't just defending their planet anymore. They were starting to push back. And the Dominion. They were starting to realize that they had underestimated humanity, and that mistake could cost them everything. The Dominion had not expected such fierce resistance from Earth. What had started as a quick mission to conquer a small, seemingly insignificant planet had turned into a nightmare. The fleet was suffering heavy losses, and Captain Veros, who had once been confident in his victory, was beginning to feel the pressure. Each day, more Dominion ships were falling to the clever tactics of Earth's people. The human ships, small and fast, were proving difficult to catch. In the heart of the Empire, the High Command was furious. The failure to conquer Earth was an embarrassment, one they couldn't ignore. The Dominion's power was built on its ability to crush weak civilizations, but Earth had proven to be anything but weak. This small, isolated planet had become a thorn in their side, and the Empire's reputation was at risk. "Enough of this," shouted Grand Admiral Korath, the Empire's supreme commander. "We will crush them once and for all. Prepare the full fleet." The full fleet, this was a dangerous move. The Dominion had a vast number of ships, more than enough to overwhelm Earth. But the humans were proving that strength alone wasn't enough. They had an advantage: the ability to think creatively, to adapt quickly. The Empire needed to bring in more firepower, and they needed to do it fast. Meanwhile, on Earth, things were changing. News of humanity's victories had spread across the globe, filling people with pride and determination. The entire planet was united in the fight for survival, and Earth's leaders knew they had to do more than just defend their home. They had to rally the galaxy itself. The broadcast began on a quiet evening, transmitted from Earth's capital city to the farthest reaches of space. Dr. Alice Carter, the scientist who had first unlocked the secrets of the Dominion's technology, appeared on the screen, her eyes filled with resolve. "To all the worlds oppressed by the Dominion," she said, her voice clear and strong, "we fight not just for Earth, but for all of us. The Dominion believes they are unstoppable, that they can crush any world beneath their heel. But we have shown them that even the smallest of us can stand tall. Together, we can defeat them. Join us. Join the fight for freedom." Her message echoed across the galaxy, carried by Earth's new ships, and it reached the ears of millions of alien civilizations. Many of these worlds had lived under the Dominion's rule for centuries, their people forced into submission. But now, Earth was offering them a chance to break free. At first, some were skeptical. Could this small planet really take down the mighty Dominion? The Empire was powerful, after all, and they had nearly crushed Earth. But the more the message spread, the more the oppressed began to listen. They saw the courage of Earth's people, their determination to fight back despite the odds. It was something the galaxy had not seen in a long time. Hope. One by one, the messages came in. First, a small planet on the edge of Dominion space, its people long subjugated, offered their support. Then another and another. Soon, entire star systems were rallying to Earth's side. These civilizations, tired of the Empire's cruelty, had finally found a voice in the unlikeliest of places: Earth. As Earth's alliances grew, so did its strength. The humans had never fought a galactic war before, but their enemies underestimated their ability to bring people together. They had no interest in domination or conquest. They simply wanted freedom. Freedom to live, to decide their own futures, and to protect their home. In the heart of the Dominion, the Empire's high command began to feel the shift. The enemy they thought would be easily crushed had become a beacon of resistance, and now that resistance was growing. The once strong Dominion was facing a wave of rebellion from within its own ranks, as more and more planets turned their backs on the Empire and joined Earth's cause. Captain Veros watched helplessly as his fleet struggled to keep control of the regions they had once ruled. The Dominion's power was slipping away, and the humans, fueled by their newfound alliances, were pressing harder than ever. It was no longer just Earth against the Dominion. It was a galactic movement, one that could not be stopped. As Veros stood on the bridge of the Admiral's Wrath, he knew one thing for certain: the war had changed. Earth was no longer just a small, insignificant planet. It was the spark that had ignited a fire, and that fire was spreading across the galaxy. The Dominion was beginning to realize that the universe had underestimated humanity, and they were starting to regret it. The war had changed. It was no longer just a fight for Earth. It had become a battle for the future of the galaxy. The Dominion's power was beginning to crumble under the pressure of Earth's unexpected resilience, and humanity's message of hope had spread far beyond their homeworld. The once untouchable empire was now facing rebellion on all sides. Earth had turned from an isolated planet into the heart of a growing movement for freedom. But Earth's leaders knew they couldn't rely on military might alone. If they were going to defeat the Dominion and liberate the oppressed civilizations of the galaxy, they needed to do more. They needed to bring those planets into the fold, not just through force, but through diplomacy, trust, and unity. The humans had a secret weapon, one that had never been used in a galactic conflict before: their ability to understand and connect with others. Despite the differences in species, cultures, and histories, humanity had a unique skill for building alliances. They didn't seek to dominate or control other worlds. They sought to empower them. This was the key to winning the war, and the human leaders knew it. Dr. Alice Carter, now a prominent figure in the Galactic Resistance, was put in charge of the diplomatic mission. She had already made a name for herself as one of the brightest minds on Earth, but her true strength lay in her ability to bring people together. She had seen what had happened when the human message reached other worlds. Planets that had long suffered under the Dominion's rule now saw a chance for freedom, a chance to stand up and fight for their own futures. Dr. Carter knew that the key to success was to show these planets that Earth wasn't just fighting for its own survival, it was fighting for them too. With a team of skilled diplomats, scientists, and former soldiers, Dr. Carter set off on a mission to connect with the oppressed planets of the galaxy. Their goal was simple: convince these planets to join Earth's cause, to stand together against the Dominion. The task wouldn't be easy, but the humans were determined. They knew the galaxy was filled with worlds just like their own, worlds that were tired of being ruled by the Empire. The first stop was the planet Telia, a lush world covered in vast forests and sparkling oceans. The Talon people had been under Dominion control for centuries, their resources plundered and their culture suppressed. But the Talon were known for their intelligence and their deep connection to nature. Dr. Carter and her team arrived on Talia under the cover of night, in a small human ship that blended into the planet's environment. They couldn't afford to make their presence known to the Dominion just yet. The Talon leaders were cautious at first. They had heard whispers of Earth's resistance, but they were skeptical. They had seen many promises of freedom come and go over the years, only to be crushed by the Dominion's overwhelming power. But when Dr. Carter spoke to them, she didn't just offer words of hope. She offered a plan. She showed them how Earth had used its ingenuity and resourcefulness to fight back, and she explained how the galaxy's many oppressed worlds could work together to challenge the Dominion. The Talon leaders were impressed. They had long admired the humans' determination and creativity. They saw something in the humans that they hadn't seen in years: hope. The Talon decided to join the fight, pledging their support to the resistance. Word of the alliance spread quickly. Other planets began to take notice. The small human delegation, once seen as weak and insignificant, was now a symbol of something larger, a symbol of the possibility of freedom, and a future without the Dominion's iron grip. Over the next few months, Earth's diplomatic efforts expanded. Dr. Carter and her team visited dozens of planets, speaking to leaders, negotiating treaties, and building a coalition of worlds united against the Empire. They didn't just offer military support, they offered something more. They offered the chance for these worlds to reclaim their independence, to chart their own paths, and to be part of a galaxy where no one was oppressed. The Dominion, once confident that they could crush this rebellion, now found themselves facing an uprising that couldn't be stopped with brute force alone. The human-led resistance was growing, and it wasn't just about fighting with weapons. It was about fighting with ideas, with unity, and with the power of diplomacy. Back on Earth, The people continued to prepare for the next phase of the war. But as the resistance spread, the Dominion found itself dealing with a new kind of problem. Not only was Earth's military strength growing, but the entire galaxy was beginning to rise up alongside them. The humans had ignited a spark, and that spark was turning into a fire that the Dominion couldn't control. The Dominion had underestimated Earth. What was meant to be a quick conquest had turned into a galactic war, one that the Empire wasn't prepared for. Despite the might of the Dominion, they now faced a united front of worlds, all fighting for freedom. Earth had become the spark that ignited a rebellion across the galaxy, and the Dominion was beginning to realize the cost of their arrogance. Captain Veros sat in his command chair on the Admiral's Wrath, his fists clenched tightly. He had never been in a situation like this before. The fleet that had once struck fear into countless civilizations now found itself on the defensive. The small, resourceful human ships, combined with their growing alliance of rebellious planets, were proving to be a serious threat. The Dominion's once dominant control over the galaxy was crumbling. "We cannot let this continue," Veros said, his voice low and filled with frustration. "We must crush the rebellion." Now, the High Command of the Dominion, desperate to regain control, ordered a new strategy. They had relied on overwhelming force to crush weaker civilizations, but Earth had proven that brute strength alone wasn't enough. The Dominion would have to adapt. In response, the Empire began deploying more advanced weaponry. Massive, heavily armed warships designed to overwhelm the human fleet and the growing resistance. These ships were equipped with experimental weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single strike. They were a last resort, a desperate move to stop the tide of rebellion. As the new fleet assembled, the resistance was also preparing. Dr. Alice Carter, who had become the symbol of Earth's leadership in the struggle for freedom, knew the coming battle would be their greatest test yet. The Dominion had grown more ruthless, and the stakes were higher than ever. But Earth wasn't backing down. They had already defied the Empire once, and they would do it again. The Resistance's forces, made up of Earth's ships and those of their allies, gathered in orbit above Earth, preparing for what they knew would be an all-out battle. Earth's ships were small and agile, but they didn't have the firepower to match the Dominion's newest warships. They would have to rely on speed, strategy, and the will to fight. The first wave of Dominion ships appeared on the horizon, massive and imposing. The Resistance fleet, though smaller in number, didn't hesitate. The human ships darted into action, weaving through the enemy fleet with unmatched agility. They struck fast, targeting the weak spots on the Dominion ships. It was the same strategy that had worked before: hit hard, hit fast, and get out before the enemy could retaliate. But the Dominion was ready this time. The new warships fired their devastating weapons, creating explosions that rocked space itself. The Resistance fleet was pushed back, but they didn't give up. They fought through the chaos, determined to hold their ground. Captain Veros watched the battle unfold on the view screen. The Resistance was resilient, but he could see cracks forming. The human ships were beginning to fall back, unable to withstand the overwhelming firepower of the Dominion's new warships. But Veros knew that they couldn't stop now. The Empire had invested too much into this campaign. They couldn't afford to lose. "We'll crush them here," Veros said to his officers, his voice cold and commanding. "No more mistakes. No more mercy." But what Veros didn't know was that the Resistance had a plan of their own. Dr. Carter and her team had been working on a secret weapon, something that would turn the tide of the battle. They had discovered the Dominion's weakness. The central control systems of their new warships were vulnerable to a precise strike. It wasn't an easy target, but it was the key to victory. As the battle raged on, Earth's ships began to pull back, luring the Dominion fleet deeper into the trap. The Dominion, confident in their superior firepower, followed without hesitation. But the humans had a trick up their sleeve. At the perfect moment, a small group of Resistance ships launched a daring attack on the Dominion's command ships, targeting their central control systems. The Dominion warships were not prepared for this kind of attack. Their powerful weapons and massive size didn't matter when their control systems were taken down. In an instant, several of the Empire's most advanced warships went dark, their weapons systems shutting down, and their engines going silent. The tide of the battle shifted in an instant. Veros watched in horror as his fleet began to lose control. The humans had struck where it hurt the most. The battle was far from over, but the Dominion had lost the upper hand. It was the first real defeat the Empire had suffered in this war. We can't let them win," Veros said, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "Regroup. We will fight until the last ship." But deep down, Veros knew something had changed. The Dominion had underestimated the humans once again, and this time the cost would be much higher. The battle above Earth had been a turning point. For the first time since the Dominion had arrived, they were losing ground. Their mighty warships, once seen as unstoppable, were falling, one by one, to the clever tactics of Earth's resistance. The humans had taken advantage of the Empire's overconfidence and had struck decisively at their weak points. Captain Veros stood on the bridge of the Admiral's Wrath, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The damage to his fleet was immense. Several of the new warships had been disabled, their control systems crippled by the humans' precise strikes. But despite the damage, Veros wasn't ready to admit defeat. He knew the war wasn't over, not yet. The Dominion had vast resources, and they could rebuild. "Regroup. We still have the strength to crush them," Veros commanded, his voice filled with determination. His officers nodded, quickly working to assess the situation. The battle was still ongoing, but the tide was turning against them. The Dominion's once unbeatable fleet was now vulnerable. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Resistance was celebrating their victory. It had been a hard-fought battle, but they had achieved the impossible. For the first time, humanity had beaten the Dominion at their own game. But Dr. Alice Carter knew that the battle was just beginning. The Dominion would not give up so easily. "Today is a victory," Dr. Carter said to her team, her voice steady. "But we cannot rest. The Empire will come back stronger. We need to prepare for what's next." The Resistance had done well in striking back, but they were still outnumbered. They had proven that they could take on the Dominion, but they needed more. More ships, more allies, and more strength to finish what they had started. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the freedom of the entire galaxy. Dr. Carter quickly organized a meeting with the leaders of the galaxy's newly formed alliance. The coalition of planets that had joined Earth's cause was growing. And now it was time to act. The Dominion might have more resources, but they lacked one crucial thing: the unity that Earth's alliance had forged. The Resistance had become a symbol of hope, and that hope was spreading. The meeting took place in a hidden command center deep beneath the surface of Earth. Representatives from dozens of planets, both near and far, gathered to discuss the next steps in the fight. There was a sense of urgency in the air. The Dominion would retaliate, and the Resistance needed a plan to finish what they had started. Dr. Carter stood before the gathered leaders, her eyes scanning the room. She knew the gravity of the situation. "We've made great strides," she began. "But the Dominion will not stop until they've crushed us. We need to strike at their heart, at the core of their power." One of the leaders, a tall alien figure from the planet Signar, spoke up. "What do you propose, Dr. Carter? The Dominion's central fleet is vast, and their command structure is well protected. How do we reach it?" Dr. Carter nodded, understanding the skepticism. "We've seen how vulnerable they are. Their ships rely on centralized control. If we strike their fleet's command center, we can disable their entire operation. But we'll need to move quickly before they regroup." The room fell silent as the leaders considered the plan. It was risky, dangerously so, but it was their best chance to finish the war. The Dominion had underestimated Earth's ability to fight back, and now Earth had the chance to turn the tide once and for all. "I'll send word to our allies," said a representative from the planet Tilia. We can mobilize our forces to assist. We have to act now, Dr. Carter said. The Dominion won't wait for us to prepare. We need to strike fast, and we need to be smart. The decision was made. The plan would move forward. The coalition of planets would unite for one final push. The time had come to hit the Dominion where it hurt the most, to strike at the heart of their power and break their hold on the galaxy. As the meeting ended, the leaders of the coalition began making their preparations. Ships were readied, alliances were strengthened, and strategies were laid out. Every planet in the Resistance knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a fight for Earth anymore. It was a fight for freedom, for the galaxy itself. On Earth, the atmosphere was tense. The people knew that the battle ahead would be the greatest test of their courage and their unity. But they had already proven that they could face impossible odds. They had already defied the Dominion. And now, with the support of their allies, they would take the fight to the heart of the Empire. The turning point had come. The humans, once thought to be insignificant, had become the galaxy's hope. And with that hope, they would rise to finish what they had started, no matter the cost. The final battle was upon them. The Resistance had gathered its strength, and Earth's allies were ready. A coalition of planets, all united in their fight for freedom, prepared to take the fight directly to the heart of the Dominion Empire. Dr. Alice Carter stood at the command center, looking out over the gathering fleet. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. For weeks, the Resistance had worked tirelessly to plan the attack on the Dominion's Central Fleet Command. They had studied every detail, every weakness, and now it was time to act. The Dominion, still reeling from their earlier defeat, had regrouped and gathered their forces. They were ready for a final showdown. "We can do this," Dr. Carter said quietly to herself, though she knew it would take everything they had. She turned to the officers around her, each one prepared to risk it all for the future of the galaxy. "We have one shot. We take down their command center, and the war ends. If we fail, we lose everything." The officers nodded in agreement. They had fought alongside Earth for so long, and they knew what was at stake. There was no turning back now. Far away in the heart of the Dominion's territory, Captain Veros was preparing his forces for the battle. The Dominion's fleet was massive, and they had fortified their position in a system that was well protected by layers of defenses. But Veros had no choice. The Emperor had given him one final chance to defeat the Resistance and bring Earth to its knees. "We will crush them," Veros said to his crew, his voice cold and determined. "Today, we show them the power of the Dominion." The two fleets were now on a collision course, and the galaxy held its breath. The battle would not just be a test of military strength. It would be a test of willpower, strategy, and the desire for freedom. Earth and its allies were fighting for the future, while the Dominion was fighting to keep its iron grip on the galaxy. The first waves of the battle began as the Resistance's ships moved into the Dominion system. Earth's fleet, though smaller in number, was fast and agile, able to dart through the enemy's defenses with precision. The Dominion's massive warships fired their weapons, causing explosions across space, but they couldn't catch the smaller human ships. The Resistance knew their advantage was speed, and they used it to full effect. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Carter's flagship, Hope's Dawn, led the charge toward the Dominion's Central Command. The Resistance's strategy was clear. They would target the command center and disrupt the Dominion's ability to coordinate their fleet. If they could take down the control center, the rest of the Empire's forces would fall apart. As the Resistance's forces pushed forward, the Dominion fleet retaliated with all its might. The battle was fierce. Explosions filled the space around them, and the sound of weapons fire echoed across the battlefield. The Resistance ships fought bravely, holding their ground against the Dominion's superior numbers. Dr. Carter watched from the bridge of Hope's Dawn as the enemy forces closed in. Her heart raced, but she kept her focus. "We're almost there," she said to her crew. "Prepare for the final push." The command center was heavily guarded, but the humans had one last advantage: their ingenuity. The Resistance had developed a special weapon, one that would disable the Dominion's communications and disrupt their fleet's ability to respond to attacks. It was a risky move, but it was the key to victory. As they neared the command center, the final wave of resistance ships launched their assault. The Dominion's defenses were fierce, but the humans were determined. Ships collided, weapons fired, and the battle raged around them. But despite the chaos, the resistance kept their focus on the target, the command center. Dr. Carter gave the order. Now, a wave of energy surged through space, directed straight at the Dominion's central control. The blast hit its mark. For a moment, everything went still. The Dominion's command center went dark. The Empire's fleet lost its ability to coordinate, and the once mighty warships began to falter. The Resistance had done it. They had broken the Dominion's control. Varos watched in disbelief as his fleet began to fall apart. The power of the Dominion had been shattered. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair as he fought to regain control, but it was too late. The battle was over. The Resistance, led by Earth, had won. In the aftermath, the galaxy erupted in celebration. The Dominion's reign was over. For the first time in centuries, the oppressed planets were free. The alliance that Earth had forged had succeeded in toppling the Empire. Dr. Carter stood on the bridge of Hope's Dawn, watching the stars beyond. The victory was hard-earned, but it was a victory for all. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had shown the galaxy that even the smallest of worlds could stand up to the greatest powers. Earth had proven that courage, unity, and hope could overcome any obstacle. And with the Dominion defeated, the future of the galaxy was brighter than ever. The war was over, and the humans had won.